What's up? I'm Adam, and this is the first episode of Voyager of the Damned. I'm officially putting out the name. I didn't want to put it out in advance because I think it's a fucking badass name.
I like it.
And it's the internet. So, next to me is my guest host for episode 1, Mr. Vernon Smith.
Hello.
So, let's see. Comic book creator, that's Hide and Dexter Breakfast, and children's book creator.
Yes, sir.
Are you working on one right now?
I'm illustrating one right now.
Okay.
About Mardi Gras Indians, and it is being
Like
painted.
feather or dot?
Feather, yes.
Okay. Just checking.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like for those that aren't from New Orleans, the kind that were featured on HBO's Treme.
Okay.
Like
all
10
right.
years ago.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Fair warning to anyone out there, this is not an all ages show.
Okay, that's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah, we're allowed to just... I don't imagine, it's not we're going to be talking all about, incest or something like that.
All right.
But if you
Tupac
curse...
taking a dump on Janeway's chest.
Well, the episode that I'm most interested in doing, because I actually have a whole bit about it. I used to do on a podcast I used to do called MOG.
Is that the Metal Hand of God?
Yes, that is the Metal Hand of God. But you were the first guest. I think you were third episode, first guest. You can go find that Metal Hand of God podcast. But the episode's called Blood Fever or something like that. It's the rape episode.
Yeah, which one was that?
I think it was season 3.
I do remember. Yeah, it's been a few years since I've watched Voyager.
Yeah.
So can't wait to get to that.
I might have I might have a few people doing that episode because that episode's going to be really fun.
Yeah, we can role play it.
Especially in #MeTooAge. But if you didn't watch the intro to Voyager of the Damned, basically the idea is this. Star Trek Voyager is, from a certain perspective, the most interesting Star Trek show. Because it has the best, arguably the best premise, and the most wasted potential. Which, through the course of this series, where I go episode by episode, which is going to be kind of torturous. Like you said, not ever. It'll come out when it comes out, basically. I'd love to do it this weekly, but I don't have the time. And also, I'm going to have to line up guest hosts, and you'll probably be back at some point.
Yeah.
Depending on your schedule. But I do want to have it from different
perspectives.
perspectives.
Next 10 years, we'll be doing this 7-season show.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I never thought about how long it would take. Yeah. Yes. It's going to take a while.
Sit back and get comfortable, because we're here for a fucking while.
So, I have a friend, I won't say his name, because I wanted him to do the show, but he won't. But we talk about this show all the time, because it's so fascinating. But the problem is the reason he wouldn't do it, because he was dude, I can't sit and watch Voyager every week. It's too depressing. Because there's some episodes that are really interesting. And there's some episodes where you want to just murder everyone on screen.
Right.
Which we'll get into a little bit, because even though the first episode is pretty good for the most part, the signs of who should die, if this was Star Trek Survivor, half the cast would be murdered immediately. Kes does get murdered, doesn't she?
Kes.
She doesn't last.
Kes.
Well, you know what? Let's just start in on that, because my most hated character, and this gets a little political, is Harry Kim. He is the Wesley Crusher of that show. And actually, I don't hate Wesley Crusher totally.
Yeah.
I think he gets a little... I don't like what's his name that plays him, but Wesley Crusher, when he was a kid, yeah. But as he got older, they developed him a little more. Harry Kim fucking sucks. And because I'm, like your daughter, part Asian, I'm supposed to like him. But, just because I have a similar amount of melanin to a character doesn't mean I give a shit. Sorry, Rose Tico, you suck too. But get a little Star Trek dig in there.
So since I divorced a Chinese girl, am I supposed to hate him even more? Because I actually didn't mind him, but I guess if I have to hate on racial principle.
No, but I'm just saying, there's nothing to that character. And also, just putting it out there, just starting right off, how are you a part of the command staff and you're an ensign for the entire run of the show?
Yeah. I don't. I get that. I just seeing as how they're like 70 years from home. I don't see promotion being that big of a deal. Like, it's like, you're halfway through the Delta Quadrant, and it's like, dude, Harry, you saved us by defeating the Captain Proton villain, and it's like, you're a lieutenant now. It's like...
You do remember Voyager at least a little bit if you pulled out Captain Proton.
Yeah.
Because it took me a second and was like, oh yeah, that shit.
Yeah. And it was like, oh, cool. It's like, yeah, you're a lieutenant. What do I get? Same shit you've been doing and that you're going to do probably until you watch your grandkids die. Yeah, I mean, it's like, oh, so do I get like a transfer? No. Do I get to work at a different department? No. Do I get an increase in pay? You don't use money.
Well, in one timeline, he got to hook up with Tom Paris's daughter.
I don't remember that.
There was an episode where Kes goes back and forth through time, and she marries Tom Paris, and they have a kid who Harry Kim hooks up with, marries, and has a kid with.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Probably
that was actually a pretty good episode.
You said Kes, and I just...
Kes is bad.
I'm not a fan of hers.
I guess her personality trait is that she's going to die young.
Yeah, which I was like, oh, cool, she only lives 9 years, like Voyager's 7 seasons. Shit.
But they killed her in like season 3.
Right.
But she also has superpowers.
Yeah.
She has telekinesis and I don't know.
And monotony voices. And
for some reason she's a nurse.
Shitty wig-ishness.
If you had telekinetic powers, don't you think they could find something better for you to do than to assist the Doctor?
Assist the hologram, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Who is one of the better characters.
Yeah. No,
especially as they develop.
Doctor's cool as shit. I like him.
I
like Doctor. I like Janeway. Yeah.
Let's make a list of the shittier ones. So Kes, Harry Kim, Neelix. Although Neelix had its moments, but for the most part, Neelix fucking sucks. To the point where Dr. Phlox from Enterprise, just because they're not a similar design, but they're kind of...
yeah.
Like, I never liked Dr. Phlox, even though that actor's pretty good.
Yeah.
Just because Neelix fucking sucks.
Right.
And Tom Paris, absolute shitball. No personality whatsoever.
But he's the bad boy.
In the first episode,
he is in the first episode,
and that's going to be the running
another
theme of Voyager the Damned. So in the first episode, so the premise, if you've never watched Voyager, and I don't know why you'd be watching this if you've never seen a single episode of Voyager, unless you just hate Star Trek.
Well, it only came out like 20 years ago. Give these people a break.
But and it's on like every streaming service at the same time.
Yeah.
So the premise is that there's this. They actually brought terrorists into the Star Trek universe. Was that in TNG? I know it was Deep Space Nine.
Next Gen, with Ensign Rowe.
Okay, she joined them?
I think she had something to do with the Maquis, but it was
kind of she might have been a Maquis terrorist before. Yeah.
Cardassians and all that.
So they brought terrorism into the Star Trek universe, which is fair because Star Trek's always been like this socio-political story. Like
it's pre-9/11, so they were thinking ahead.
We're not going there. But
they're the ones behind 9/11.
The Maquis.
Roddenberry.
I buy it. Roddenberry's corpse. He and Bin Laden are sitting in a bunker somewhere.
Yeah.
I'd watch that show. We should start that show. You can animate it.
All right.
It's a lot of work. But so they have these terrorists that the Starfleet is kind of following. They've got a Starfleet officer, Tuvok, on a Maquis ship, and the ship that he's on disappears. And so his captain, Captain Janeway, who's about to embark on I don't know, it was probably going to be like a 5-year mission or something like that.
I think it was
Voyager.
Yeah, maybe so.
I think that was
a short mission.
Okay, so Ignore that. I'm not editing that shit. So anyway, the ship disappears. Captain Janeway goes to find him. So she goes and finds a former Maquis member who's been captured, Tom Paris, and they go to find the trail.
Yeah,
and
Tom Paris was in Federation prison.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which has a story of its own that we'll get to in a minute. Because there's so much at work and why Voyager did and didn't work.
Yeah.
That it actually is more interesting than Voyager.
Is that the Tom Paris was another character before?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We'll get to that in a second. But, so Voyager goes after them. They disappear too because it turns out on the other side of the galaxy, in the Delta Quadrant, there's an ancient alien who has this giant space station who's just been kidnapping people. And I just realized, I'd never thought about it before, but as I was just rewatching the episode, he's doing like the abduction, I guess fantasy isn't the right word, but nightmare that people have of UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no anal probing that we know of in that episode.
But there's some...
Was he ass fucking them?
No.
Like off camera?
Yeah.
I'd watch that episode. But he's like implanting them with things and they're screaming and they really go for the lighting. I mean, it's not green, but they go for the lighting and all that to make you feel...
beds, like, yeah.
Yeah. And so he's implanting things in them, and turns out later in the show you find out that he's dying, and he was trying to impregnate Harry Kim and B'Elanna Torres because they had the right genetic material to possibly be of his species.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a lot of sense in the long run. But basically, so he's dying, and it turns out his species. It's almost if it was made today, it would definitely be a global warming allegory,
right?
Because it turns out his species like crash landed on this planet, destroyed their planet. So,
but he didn't say how. He just said right. Didn't he just say they
didn't really explain? Yeah, I guess they're
their planet.
Yeah, so he's protecting them from other species because he destroyed their species. Or their planet, and it gets really complicated. I'm not explaining this very well.
And these are Kess's people who only live 9 years.
Right.
So he did something. So it's like, in 30 years, everyone would have just forgotten anyway what life was like before, because that would be like 300 years ago for us.
But he was a caretaker.
He was a caretaker.
He was taking care.
Words around.
There's a lot of things going on. But it's so the basic premise of Voyager is this. There is a crew on a next level Starfleet ship. Completely away from Starfleet. They have no help. They have barely any hope. They're just trying to get home. And it's this crew that's half terrorists and half Starfleet officers. And they have to find a way to get along and work together to get home. And that is a fantastic fucking premise that they completely abandoned by
that kind of conflict. I mean, that's got to take like years for these two different types of people to integrate,
or at least 3 episodes.
Right.
Like after 3 episodes, they're just like, nah, they're friends.
Yeah.
They're all friends. You know, they do episode 2, and like every once in a while they'll be like, oh yeah, aren't they supposed to?
Oh yeah, we don't like you guys. Like, oh man, that's right, we forgot about that. That's why they have different little pins on the side.
And then there's episodes where they forget that they're in the Delta Quadrant, so like Klingons show up at one point. They're like, no, the Klingons, like, they discovered a wormhole or something.
And I think Janeway forgets that they're, because I mean, they're like hundreds of miles away from us. They're like she walks around still being, we're the Federation, like to other aliens. Like, she'll be like, the Federation doesn't stand for this kind of treatment. And they're like, what the fuck are the Federation, dude? Like, we don't... You're 75,000 light years from the edge of where your shit is. Dude.
Their super translators also impart the information of what the Starfleet.
Oh, is that it downloads like Starfleet technical manuals and stuff. And
at one point, the Borg Queen shows up several seasons later.
Yeah.
So, because I guess they had Alice Krieg. Like on contract, and they were like, "Hey, you want to show up in this?"
Is it still her though? I thought it was like a lookalike.
I think it's
actress.
Supposed to. It probably.
I think
wasn't.
It's supposed to be. Yeah,
it probably wasn't, but it was the Borg Queen.
Yeah. Which my thing, I was just like, oh, well, maybe it's just my own Borg history theory that I came up with. I think they have just like genetic material of this original Borg person, and that's where I fill in the gaps, because as much as I love Star Trek and live it and follow it, like I don't care about little. Well, how does that explain? And it's like, why do Klingons in the '60s just look like people in blackface? And
they explained,
which I know they explained that in Enterprise.
They explained it. The explanation was in Enterprise. They brought it up for the first time in Deep Space Nine.
We don't talk about it. Yeah. Which I was like, in my head, like even younger, I was just like, oh, it's just a different race of Klingons, and those were the ones that they were sending out. It's why I don't mind the Discovery Klingons that look retarded.
See, I haven't watched Discovery.
Okay, it's different, but it's good. Like I don't want to be the old man Star Trek fan, like, even though technically I am, but I don't want to be like, that's not my Star Trek.
I mean, it isn't, though.
Right. No, but it's also, I mean, like, as a little kid, I grew up watching reruns of the original series, and then, as a teenager, was watching Next Gen, and I was like, oh, this is dumb. This guy is old, and, like, I wanted Picard to die so that Riker would take over, because Riker looked like Kirk, and I was like, yeah, if that happens...
Wait, does Riker look like Kirk?
I don't know, because he's, like, young, and he's got the swoopy little hair thing, and
he's indiscriminate with his penis.
And he's
a space whore.
Banging, dude, and I know this is Next Gen and not Voyager, but when he gets abducted, or like he's like a Roswell alien in one episode, and he like ends up banging Fraser's wife, and because she's like a scientist in the lab that's examining him.
I'll have to rewatch that.
And you see
them
just like kind of coming out of a door, and like he's straightening his tie, and she's like, like fixing herself. And
it just occurred to me that because I piled up my sheets, they look kind of like a pillow witch.
Oh yes, they do. Whoa. It's blanket Momo, but it's the illusion because it's your sweater that's hanging on the wall behind it that's making her hair.
I hadn't intended to film this way. As time goes on, I'm actually going to set up a studio more.
And that's her face.
So anyway, so Tom Paris, just a quick aside, like, because this sort of goes into like why characters fail. So he was originally a more interesting character. So there's an old TNG episode. Well, they're all old episodes at this point. There's a TNG episode where Wesley Crusher is part of, what do they call them, the Red Stars?
The Red Squadron, Red Star, yeah.
A-Stars or something like that.
Yeah.
Whatever. They're like an elite
The Top
group.
Gun of the Star Trek
Top Gun
pilots.
is a perfect example. Over in Starfleet, and they're led by, I think it's the same actor?
It's the same actor.
It's the same actor. I can't think of his name offhand.
Thomas Duncan McNeil?
I think it's Thomas McNeil.
Robert Duncan McNeil.
Yes, Robert.
Yes, because Thomas Paris.
Could have been the same.
Yeah.
So basically, they're trying to show off, and they end up getting one of the pilots from their squadron killed, and so they all lie and they try to cover it up, and eventually Picard's like, "This far, no farther," and Wesley Crusher's like, "You're like my dad," and he tells him,
"It's because I fucked your mother,"
and he did. I think Wesley watched. But anyway, so it was a really good episode of TNG, and I don't know why they didn't carry over the name, because they imply that if something similar happened.
I heard it was because the writer of the show, like that was his creation, that character. Mm-hmm. So if they brought that back for Voyager, they would have to pay this dude royalties for creating this character.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that makes sense at least.
Yeah.
But so they sort of...
Because it's that character, it's a different name. Like, he's in... Because even in that episode, like, when he meets Harry, and Harry's like, is it true? And he's like, did I lie? Yeah. Was it my fault? Yeah, like, he's...
And he never quite says what happened.
Character, yeah.
So, it's an interesting concept for a character... And they play it out throughout the first episode, Caretaker.
Even when he saves Chakotay's life, and he's like, you belong to me now. And then Chakotay kind of does something to save the ship, and Paris is like, don't think we're even. You still belong to me. And I'm like, fuck, dude, yeah, dude, own this dude. But then they're just...
They forget about it. At the end of the episode, Janeway gives him a field commission to Lieutenant Commander, and that's kind of his arc for the whole show. That's it. Like, he's just a good guy from now on. He's not conflicted. He's not a former terrorist that betrayed those terrorists to get himself off of a death sentence or whatever the equivalent is in the Star Trek universe. And that's it. And so he sucks. Because then he's just like, and I don't care, but like he's just like generic white jock guy.
Yeah.
Like he's the star of every season of goddamn, I can't think. Real World.
Oh yeah.
You know, like how they have their like
on a pizza place.
Here's black rap guy.
Yeah.
Here's sassy black girl. Here's hick white girl that doesn't know what's going on.
I don't understand why people just can't get along. You don't understand my struggle. I just want to fucking get some pussy, man.
I do.
That's Paris.
Anyway, but overall, like the first episode, like it's kind of hard to hate on it, except for, so the one thing is, so I guess like 20 minutes into the episode, they go onto the Caretaker's ship, and it's set up like 1940s,
yeah.
like fake Southern,
yeah.
You know, like
there's want some corn on the cob and mint juleps,
and that's the weird thing. So it's holograms. And I guess you could argue like replicator technology, because I guess they've done that in various Star Trek shows. But she's trying to get them to eat corn, and at one point one of the holograms tries to fuck Paris.
Yeah.
And
after showing him where to find the Caretaker, he's like,
yeah.
Oh, he's in that barn. Oh, what's over there?
Nothing but hay.
Nothing, but here's something you might like.
I think she tried to tag team both of them.
Yeah, it was like him and Harry. Yeah.
There's this weird moment where you're like, I'm kind of for him going for it. Honestly, I mean, why wouldn't you? No harm, no foul. It's a hologram.
Yeah.
You know?
Grab her by the holographic pussy. Not that I endorse.
I do.
Oh.
But yeah, so that's the one glaring thing in the episode that's just pretty bad. And they keep going back to it. And then, like, so the Caretaker ends up being one of the holograms. It's just this old man who's playing the banjo. And again, I don't know where he got any of this information. I guess he must have downloaded all the systems.
Yeah,
just randomly.
This is how we interpret your
people
to be. We just pick one thing that's just a few decades removed from the audience watching it. Like,
well, at least like,
why wouldn't it be like Egyptian slavery?
Well, that's the thing. Like, old Star Trek would do that. Like TNG did have like Roman Colosseums and stuff
right?
Like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
At one point, the Greek gods showed up in TOS.
Right.
Like for some reason, Voyager it's just like
Nazis.
Iowa in 1943. But anyway, but yeah, the Caretaker is disguised as this old man who played the banjo, and even though the episode seems to occur over the course of like a week, they keep asking like, why can't we go home? He's like, you can't!
There's no time!
There's no time! You don't have what I need! Go away!
You don't understand.
We just want to go home. That's too complicated! But
you don't understand!
But it took like a second for
us
to...
Make us understand?
And then at the end, he basically tells them, like, you could send yourself home, or you could save the Ocampa by blowing up the ship. It was like, well, if that was fun, it was that easy, why didn't you just do it?
And it, like, he wants... Because Janeway's like, well, maybe they can take care of themselves. They can't do that! But that's what they're going to have to do when you blow up.
It's better than that. It's way better than that because
the Caretaker set the self-destruct
He seals them in their little underground bunker with enough food, power, and water for 5 years.
Which is half their lifetime.
Yes. So eventually there's going to be like an Ocampa Holocaust.
Yeah.
or I guess not Holocaust. Like it's going to be one of those fantasies that we had when we were a kid, where we would run out of food because that was the environment that we grew up in as kids, where we were convinced we were going to run out of power, food, and water, and we were going to end up turning into cannibals.
They're just going to eat each other. Yeah.
But that's what the Ocampa would do eventually, or they would just like.
Well, they could probably just leave there and go. Oh, except
no, they sealed it in.
Screens that you can't touch, or else you will be vaporized.
So. Moral of the story is, at the end of this episode, it sets up a horror story where the Ocampa eat each other. Good job, Caretaker. But other than that, pretty good episode.
Right. Except, then there's also the shitty villains that are introduced. The tree head.
Yeah, I can't think of their names. But the Kazon. And they're recurring characters. And I never quite understood... The reason they're shitty villains is because they're just generic, easy makeup villains in Star Trek.
Yeah, the Delta Quadrant Klingon looking, sort of.
But right. Not as... They're a little more like California. Like they have like a little bit of like street, like surfer kind of thing to them. But they're on these basically like garbage ships, like loosely still together ships. But somehow they're able to take on Voyager, which... is arguably, I know this is sacrilege to Star Trek, but the second best Star Trek ship.
Yeah.
It's way better looking than any of the Enterprises.
Except for the 1980s movie Enterprise. That's, I think, my favorite Star Trek
ship. Okay, but from a design standpoint.
Ever. I think it's a gorgeous ship. I think it's beautiful. If I had the power to design a ship and travel around the universe, it would be the 1980s original series movie Enterprise.
Star Trek the movie.
Yeah, from motion picture.
It was Star Trek the motion picture.
Yeah, up until Undiscovered Country. Oh, dude, I get up fucking the cell for that. Yeah.
There's no coming back to that.
But they're like the Kazon. They're dressed in rags, but they're in spaceships. But they can't. They don't have water. Like water.
That's their biggest weakness. Is like they're all going to run out of water. Like when they introduce Neelix, who initially comes off kind of cool. Like they get he quickly starts to suck.
Yeah.
But initially, he's like this sort of weird, like Smeagol-ish
he's
character.
Like this scavenger.
And, he's like, I can't help you unless you have the most valuable substance in the universe, water. And Janeway just, like, almost rolls her eyes on camera.
Yes.
And just goes, yeah, dude, we can just materialize water, like, right now.
I'll give you as much as... Even to the point, like, unbelievable, like, we'll give you as much as you need. Yeah, we got it.
And as soon as he comes on the ship, Tuvok's like, we'll even let you bathe in it.
Which he does.
He does. And even his costume goes, like, it's supposed to be like, your ship designed these sweet new clothes. But his costume prior to the Star Trek Starfleet redesign was way cooler.
Yeah.
It was kind of like almost like a outer space pimp, sort of like it had like a furry lining to it and stuff like that. Everything about this show is great idea. Let's shit on it.
Yeah, it's awesome and fucking let's take that. Like Voyager could create so much water that they just watered down everything that was good about it. It was.
Well, it makes you wonder. Almost makes you wonder, why didn't they just go to species like the Kazon and just be like, oh, you want to fight? Or we could just send you over a ship full of water.
Yeah. Just hold a glass and be like,
No,
we're cool.
But they don't do that, and the Kazon almost kill them multiple times in their fucking shitty Pinto ships.
Yeah, which they could have done it the first episode, but instead their ominous line, "You've made an enemy of the Kazon today." And there's still, like, 5 of their ships there. And it's like, well, fucking prove it and blow up Voyager.
Yeah, also, Voyager has no way of knowing how many Kazon are out there. Like, she could have just been like, what if it really was just like 3 ships of them?
Yeah.
And they were just like, it's like when you're about to get into a fight, you're like, oh, I've got like 20 of my buddies in that bar right now. You don't want to mess with me.
Just wait and see.
But again, like, overall, pretty good episode. And like in the pantheon of Star Trek premieres, like, I like the premise of Farpoint Station. What was it? What was it?
Encounter at Farpoint.
Encounter at Farpoint. Yeah. I like the premise, but largely because of the cinematography and the wannabe like TOS visuals.
Yeah.
You know, like thank God, like 2 years in, they were like, this sucks. Let's, you know, and I think it was like literally Roddenberry died, and they were like, oh, cool, we can make this look good now.
Yeah.
No offense, Gene Roddenberry.
Down the dirt, like, yeah, rewrite.
But like I've never been a big fan of Encounter at Farpoint.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in that first season that, like, even some of the music, it's like, it's really, which, I mean, you can't blame them. It's the first Trek in like 20 years, the first thing to follow the original series, and to where, like, people were picketing. It's like, no Star Trek without Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. And
I don't remember any of that.
Yeah,
you're a little bit older than me.
Yeah, and these are things that I've also seen, like, later. Like, if you look up, there's like something about like how Trek almost, like, how Next Gen almost didn't happen, or something like that, or some kind of thing with everything that went into it.
There's documentaries on it that you can watch.
Yeah.
I watched part of the really pretentious one, like the Captains.
Oh yeah.
Which I guess was a love letter from William Shatner to William Shatner.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if I looked like William Shatner, I'd write love letters to myself all the time.
And Sisko came off like a lunatic. Avery Brooks.
That's because Avery Brooks. Look, Ben Sisko is my favorite captain by far.
Yeah.
For various reasons, but like Avery Brooks is this like Shakespearean actor who ended up like most famous for Star Trek and fucking MacGyver.
Right.
I mean, he played like a man called Hawk or something like that.
Most of the Next Gen weren't they all Shakespeare people too? I think. Maybe?
I mean, I'm sure Patrick Stewart was probably in the Royal Shakespeare Company and stuff like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know Brooks was like he's sitting there just like making up songs and playing, and he sounds like, I'm like, dude, this guy had a lot of fun in the '60s. Like he just seemed, which it's just so weird because he was so out there, but like on the show he is so composed, and he's like, I'm this firm commander. I'm raising my son, and
although he does, I've always laughed. Like, people always make fun of William Shatner for his speaking style.
Right.
Avery Brooks is way more Shatner than Shatner, if you watch those shows. And
I
love it.
I have to rewatch it.
But he pauses all the time.
Oh, yeah. And you're not going to tell me how to run the station.
But, yeah. I mean, honestly, look, if I was smart, I would just make this, like, a show about like TOS, TNG, and Deep Space Nine.
It'll all come up. I mean,
it'll come up because there's going to be really short episodes. Yeah. Like any episode that because I think the second episode focuses on Kim, any episode that focuses on him or Cass or whoever, you know. But there are great characters. Like you mentioned, Janeway.
Janeway's fucking awesome.
Chakotay is pretty good. He's a little bit Riker light. Here and there.
Yeah, he's watered down, which I get. He's supposed to be like the chilled Native American spirit, but he was also.
But he shouldn't be.
This fucking, like, you know, terrorist rebel leader guy.
Why?
But he's always just like, well, you know, my animal guide tells me.
Yeah, which by the way, like they even bring that up at the end of the episode. They're like, "Aren't you able to turn to a bird?" He's like, "Not right now. You're kind of heavy," which is a funny joke, but it's also like.
Yeah. Paris is a little like, hey, don't you have some Indian? Like he calls him Indian like 2 or 3 times in it, and it's like, dude, even in the '90s they weren't saying Indian.
Although we did start off with this feather not dot thing,
right?
But
he's like, what are you gonna do, Chakotay? Just stand next to a pile of trash and cry? Like it's almost just that. Like, why don't you go gamble or drink some firewater? Like he's.
I'm actually going to make a meme where I'm just going to take a picture of Chakotay, Photoshop a tear coming off his eye and just write Voyager sucks. Anyway, and actually what's interesting about that, and I didn't know how you felt about it because I knew you were a Star Trek guy, but the last, I'd say 3 years, there's been like that Voyager backlash that sometimes things happen where something is notoriously bad and people are like, no, actually, if you look at it, it's really good. And I think some of it's like girls wanting, like, and Janeway is, well, she's not really a great Star Trek captain or Starfleet captain because she regularly wrecks the Prime Directive.
Yeah.
Like, just constantly. In fact,
Except for in the first episode.
Yeah, she constantly, like, at some point, she wrecks the temporal Prime Directive multiple times. Mm-hmm. But as a character, she's very effective. She's very commanding. To the point where Chakotay occasionally looks like a bitch. Yeah. Like, especially in the first episode. Like, she's like, he's trying to get away, and she's like, hey, stop, let's just hang out. And he's just like, all right. And she's like, hey, I got a plan. All right, we'll go with that. Yeah.
We're going to stay here. Who the hell are you? She's the captain.
Stop being mean to Paris. Right. like he's just got no fight left in that dog.
No, but, that she's the cap. Like when Torres is like, wait, we're not fucking staying here in the Delta Quadrant. And who the hell do you think you are? And he's like, she's the captain. Fuck, not my captain. Like Torres would say.
Hashtag not my captain.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love her. I think, like, to me, she's pretty Kirkish. Like, even sometimes, like, her expressions, I'm like, oh man, she's got like the Kirk look in her eyes. Like,
I would love to see that. I've only seen like a few seconds of footage. So part of the story of Voyager is that what's Janeway's real name?
Kate Mulgrew.
Kate Mulgrew was not the original captain. Genevieve Bujold. Yeah, Genevieve Bujold filmed like most of the first episode. Yeah. And supposedly the actor who played Garrett Wang recently, because apparently there's like one of the Star Trek actors has a podcast that's like subscription, so I haven't listened to it, but like they'll bring a lot of the old, and they'll tell things that they've never told in the past. And apparently Genevieve Bujold was just like, I can't do with the schedule. I've got a family at home in Paris, and like I'm done. And apparently didn't get along well with most of the crew anyway. So, but I'd be interested in seeing actually seeing the footage and seeing how I've seen a few seconds of it, but they've never released like actual scenes of.
Yeah, there's some. I think you can find like when they first get into the Delta Quadrant and like shit's kind of going crazy. I think because I've seen it and I want to say like that's when it is like yeah, maybe. But she I like.
It would have been a very different show basically.
I like Kate Mulgrew better.
But Janeway's pretty awesome. Chakotay for the most part, especially like as it goes along, is pretty awesome. Torres and Tuvok are probably my two favorite characters on the show. Yeah. Tuvok, because it was probably a pretty hard thing for him to do, Tim Russ, just because like being that you're playing the character of this emotionless race after Spock. Yeah. Because he's the first main Vulcan after Spock. Yeah. And Spock's one of the most legendary, characters in fiction. So, but he really owns it, and I think brings like a different dynamic to it. Yeah. He's a little more like surly and annoyed, like especially like him and Neelix.
So annoyed. He's just constantly. Like I don't like he has really wide nostrils, and I don't think they were that big before he started that. Like he at the beginning of the episode they were like this, and by the end of the episode you're just like, fucking Neelix, I swear to God, dude, if you don't. No, Tuvok's awesome. I'm not a big Torres. I think again. Like she's kind of like the Klingon version of Spock, where she's half human, half Klingon, right? And they could have pushed that, and I felt like they did some, but not as much as they could.
But at least she had a personality.
Yeah.
Like, you could tell there was inner strife.
Yeah.
Like, what's Cass's personality? What's
about that?
What's Paris's personality? He's just like, I'm a dude. I like to do dude things.
He should have been wearing like a Baja 90s reference.
He's got Axe body spray. But yeah, so it's this is going to be a rough show for me to do. Really, later seasons get better.
Yeah.
They introduce more interesting concepts, and I'll get a little into the history in later episodes, like why Voyager is the way it is. But overall, not a bad series.
No,
just a lot of bad episodes.
Yeah. Yeah, my only complaint is that they didn't push it more. Right. But again, it was also the 90s. I mean, this is, and people compare it to like fucking Battlestar Galactica. They did this and they pushed it a lot more. And it's like, it was also like, almost 10 years later.
Right.
I mean,
And by the way, so little history of that. The writers of Battlestar Galactica,
right?
No, Battlestar Galactica were the writers on Deep Space Nine,
right?
Who were finally able to just do whatever they wanted.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, the
I
creators,
thought the producer or somebody, but
no, the producers stayed on Star Trek and continued to wreck it as much as they could until eventually, what's his name from
J.J. Abrams?
No, it wasn't J.J. Abrams. It's his boy though. That's a flat earther, I think. Orsi and man, getting older sucks. But yeah, those guys. They came along and really wrecked it.
I like the first Abrams movie.
Which one?
2009 Star Trek.
Did you see the third one? Star Trek Beyond?
Yeah.
You didn't like Star Trek Beyond? I think that's like the second one sucks. I will never watch the second one ever again. That was straight up garbage. I don't care how hot Alice Eve looks in her bra and panties. We could literally like look at a picture of that as soon as we're done with this, and we will. But no, I love Star Trek Beyond. Actually, I own that. I think the 2009 one's pretty good.
Yeah,
it's got a little too much of them trying to imitate the original act. Well, Chris Pine doesn't, but like Carl Urban definitely is doing a little bit of impression.
Yeah.
Zachary Quinto definitely doing a Spock impression. What's her name isn't really doing an impression of an Uhura. She's doing her own.
Yeah.
But it's got a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I don't really see what they could have done different with. I mean, given with what they were working with, I think they did. They were like, and going into it, I was like, man, this is gonna suck. Why are they doing this? But blah, everything looks different. And then
I think it sucks for Star Trek fans because it was final confirmation that this is just an action show now.
Yeah.
Like, even like somebody pointed out to me, like, because First Contact is arguably my favorite Star Trek movie, including the original VOD. Like, it's First Contact's awesome, but somebody pointed out like it goes into that action movie territory, and a lot of Picard's like personality has changed from TNG. And I think with the '09 Star Trek, it's just like, look, this is just like another Star Wars wannabe, and a lot of what made Star Trek. But Star Trek's an interesting philosophical show, and you do see that attempted in Voyager.
Yeah.
There are definitely episodes, although some of those episodes are ripped off from better shows, but which I'll get to eventually. But it's still Star Trek, and that's the thing is Voyager came after Deep Space Nine, and it was an attempt to get back to basics. It's attempting at TOS, but with a twist, because TOS was like TNG, The Next Generation, takes place in this universe where Starfleet's everywhere. But the original series, they did feel more abandoned.
Yeah.
It was more like they're out exploring the unknown universe. There wasn't like,
I think they went to a starbase like once or twice. I mean, I know they did it with the Tribbles episode, but yeah, it was...
But for the most part,
they encountered another ship, it was because it was destroyed. Mm-hmm. And they were like, oh, the Intrepid's destroyed. Oh, the whatever. Like, it's always just the remains of a ship and
maybe some of that was just like they only had so much money and they were producing this expensive sci-fi show. But
they were seeking out new life and new civilization.
Right.
They're like, hey, I'm Captain Kirk. Where it's like, Next Gen, it was like, Kirk was way over here, and with Next Gen they were kind of here. Like everything was, it's like, oh yeah, they're meeting up with another starship,
and sometimes they would meet up with themselves at different points in time.
Right.
Multiple episodes. So anything else to kind of say about this? Overall, good episode. It's kind of hard to...
Yeah, good episode, good series. I know it might seem like we were kind of shitting on it by saying how it didn't meet its potential, but mostly...
I don't think it's a good series. I just don't think... It's not bad either. Like, it's...
I wish it would have
It's a ruined series. It's a half-assed series.
It's like a fan-made series, I think.
Okay.
Like, because like if you've seen like different fan made series of Star Trek, which
there's one that stars like Chekhov and Tuvok somehow.
Oh yeah, some of the movies, yeah, I've seen those, but there've been like some like there's like Star Trek Continues, which is really good. Which like the dude playing Kirk fucking looks just like him.
Really?
Yeah, it's this guy Vic Mignogna who's like an anime voice actor, and a couple of the other guys are like anime voice actors too. And they've got, like the sets, like these guys went all out money wise, but it's sort of things that it revisits a lot of what the original series did. Like they meet Apollo, they meet Sulu is there, and
that's kind of cool. I'd watch that.
Yeah, but
if any of those guys see this, and you want to come on the show, that would be awesome. You know who I should get? The guy who does an awesome Data cosplay locally.
Yeah, and he's like married to Lieutenant Yar.
Is he?
I think so.
I don't know that guy's name. I know he commented on a thread when Spock died. I got into a little bit of trouble. Maybe I'll tell about that later. I like to tease things because you got to come back for the second episode, even though again it's the second episode of Voyager and it's going to suck balls.
Yeah, but I guess what I mean by fan made is there's like aside from Neelix and Kes, like there aren't really any new type of characters. Like when Next Gen came on, they had the android. There was Klingons had been around, but there was like a Klingon crew member. Like there's the doctors, but they've had holographic characters.
We didn't
before.
even touch on the Doctor, who is arguably the best character in the show.
Yeah, Doctor, Janeway, and Tuvok. Pretty amazing. And I don't really hate the rest. It's mostly the God, when I rewatched it and Kes and Neelix were like, "We want to come along." I'm like, "Fucking don't, just don't. I don't need you at all. Like, yeah, you're a guide to the galaxy, but not for long." I think it's like halfway.
But he's like a guy from like West Wego or something like that. Like he's probably been around the block.
And everything. Yeah. But then it's like, but once you cross the bridge, it's like, I don't really know.
A whole new world.
Yeah, I don't know anybody in Lakeview. It's like, well, what are you gonna do? We got a flat tire in Lakeview.
And he's like, "You're gonna taste my cooking." No, that sounds horrible.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Doctor's really cool. Yeah, but I guess from what I can recall, there weren't really any new Starfleet characters that were introduced. So we're introduced to new characters by way of everyone else in the galaxy, except for the Romulans, the Borg, the Klingons, the Next Gen people that show up.
But it's mostly Barclay.
Right.
It's like 8 episodes with Barclay. And at the end, he's a part of the crew for some reason.
Yeah.
What?
Well, we're introduced to Sarah Silverman eventually.
Oh, yeah, she was in that past episode.
Go back in time, yeah.
So weird. She's just trying to, like, nail Paris the whole time or something like that. Like, come on, get in my van and let's peace and love.
Yeah, fellas. The Doctor. Doctor, we haven't really touched on him. What can we say about the Doctor?
We don't need to. There's going to be other episodes.
Okay.
But just cool character, and it's mostly because Robert Picardo is a badass. Because that character, much like Tuvok, that character, it's so interesting that these characters that should be hollow and empty, hologram, get it?
Mm-hmm.
Are far more interesting and just engrossing than characters like Harry Kim, who's the ingenue, or Kess, who's this like wide-eyed alien that's leaving the first Ocampa to leave her planet ever.
No one cares.
You know. All right.
I don't know why I hate her so much.
Because she sucks.
And if she's watching, I'm sorry. I liked you in American History X.
No, I think she's in prison now.
Oh.
She ended up like a stripper or something.
Oh.
Yeah, things did not go well for that.
She's not the
actress.
one that did the sex slave. No, that was chick from Supergirl.
No, yeah, Allison Mack Hunter.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's not a reflection on you as a person, but just your character and your acting skills.
No, actually, if her life went the direction...
What'd she go to prison for?
I think she went to jail for like... I don't remember, but I know...
If it was kiddie porn, then yeah, you're a shitty person.
No, she maybe it was drugs.
Oh, okay.
I don't. Things did not go well for that girl after Star Trek.
They didn't go well
actually,
for a while. She was on Star Trek.
Fair enough. I don't think she gets invited to any of the conventions. But well, anyway. So where can people find you?
Online at Vernon Draws, either VernonDraws.com, Vernon Draws on Facebook, Vernon Draws on Instagram, and Vernon Draws on Twitter. But I think I've made like 3 posts in the 10 years that I've had that account. So Vernon Draws.
Is there any possibility of Vernon Draws on your mom?
If she pays me enough, or if I've been drinking.
Let's get some whiskey. All right, I've been Adam. Hope you enjoyed this. We had a good time. I think I did. I don't know.
Yeah. Fabulous.
Vernon will be back on a future episode. I really want to get some people that. What's going on? I might be running out of hard drive space. I want to get some people that maybe aren't as big Star Trek fans and expose them, and just I want to get different perspectives. So, but yeah, join us on the next episode. Hopefully, it won't be too long. I really can't do this regularly. I just got too much going on. But thank you, and I don't know. What's something Star Trek-y that we can end it on?
See you on the other side of the galaxy. Because it's Voyager, and that's...
All right, we're out.